Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Afshin Razavi, and I represent PAS, Pakistan Advertisers Society, as it is known to all of you. Few of you might know about PAS, but I'll just take a minute to go through what we actually do. So PAS is an advertisers body or an association working towards the betterment of the industry, particularly in the areas of marketing and advertising. PAS does a lot of work, such as arbitration, advocacy, industry researches, such as LSM and SEC ABC, which was coined by PAS some years back. We run the one of the biggest awards by the name of FE Pakistan. And we focus a lot on resource development and skill set area throughout the year through these webinars, workshops, conferences, and seminars. We also take up projects and initiatives from time to time according to the industry needs. For example, we've just launched 3 very important tools which are available on PAS website, and you can get all the details from there once you get off from the webinar and get in touch with us. This is one of the reason we have partnered with Jack of Digital and Spider to exactly take you through this unique solution to fight digital ad fraud. So as you're well aware, the digital evolution has started in Pakistan and at a very fast pace, and we always tend to keep the industry informed that way. The largest chunk of the world's mass budget is now invested in digital platforms, and thus need arises that the money invested can be tracked and made sure that it's spent and spent well. As an industry body, the challenge also becomes very bigger to build that trust with the advertisers, not only with them, but between brands and consumers, brands and agencies, and brand and publishers. Ad fraud, as of now, is one of the fastest growing cyber crimes in the digital world. Though it's hard to estimate, but its penetration is likely to be upwards by 10% on all digital spend. And globally, it is estimated it's likely to represent more than US 50 billion by the year 2025 end. So with that, I will leave you to Ronald, who is the speaker today. Ronald is a product manager with Spider, and he's got 12 years of experience in global digital advertising in regions such as Europe, US, MENA, and APAC. He's on board with us, and he's going to share the valuable information. But before that, and also among speakers, I have with me Faisal Sheikh, who represents Jack of Digital. He's the CEO. And before that, I think we'll just go through just one poll we have with us, just to set the ground and agenda, as Ronald will take the floor there. Mariam, can we have the poll? Guys, just take 2 minutes to go through it, and then we're going to show you the results also.
Thank you, Afshin. Should I get started now?
Just give a second. Mariam is just going to show you the results.
Okay.
I think it's just like 20 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Ronald, can you see the results also? So as you can see, Interestingly, a lot of people know about ad fraud. Yeah. Mariam, we are through with it. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ronald. You can take it over from here.
Sweet, thank you. The results of the poll actually really interesting. It'll help guide this conversation a little bit. Okay, yep, good. So just to give a little background about Spider AF as well, just so let everyone here know about who Spider AF is, because it's probably the first time you've heard about us. So we are a premier ad fraud tool that has been within Japan and also globally for the last 6 years. Predominantly previously, most of our service has been aimed towards mobile advertising and networks within the Japanese region, also Korea and other parts of APAC. However, in the last 2 and almost 3 years now, we've been heavily focused on global, in particular around web advertising, but we still do have a lot of support on mobile advertising and on the network side as well. But the needs have been kind of changed, especially with the changes in the Apple ecosystem. But our support's still there, but a lot of this conversation will be kind of focused on the web advertising side. So diving right into it, globally, we've already kind of figured global ad fraud damages is pretty high. Expectation here is around 200, or in 2026, about 112 billion US dollars will be wasted across the globe. Most of this loss, of course, is going to be in the US. Second to that, it looks like Japan, and then China. But
sorry, I think you need to change the slide.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at a slightly different slide. Yeah. So yeah, the problem here, trying to represent is just there's a lot of places where or ad fraud is being affected across the entire world, predominantly within what we would generally consider tier 1 geos. But what we'll see in the next slide, please, is that according to the research that we've been looking at, is that Pakistan also is representative of quite a lot of this ad fraud loss. So in 2022, the expectation is about 50 billion or 50 million will be lost to ad fraud, but that will increase to 88 million. And what that means in terms of clicks is somewhere around 945 million clicks by 2026 are expected to be fraudulent clicks. Now, next slide, please. So what is ad fraud, right? So ad fraud, in general, people kind of imagine just bots, maybe some crawlers, but some other examples of ad fraud could exist that are a little bit easier to kind of understand. At least most everyone here kind of knows what ad fraud is, but for the few people who don't know, it can take many different shapes. So for example here is getting advertising from random geographies. In general, with your advertising, you want it to be hyper localized. So for example, for Pakistan, you want to only target Pakistan. But maybe you've been looking at your analytics data, but you're seeing traffic coming from sources such as India or China, places that you weren't expecting this type of behavior. We also see this type of behavior within the domains as well. What we've had in a couple of our clients was we've analyzed their placements that they've been serving their ads on, and we've detected that they were getting more, they're targeting ads specifically for Singaporean domains, for example, but they were getting domains that had .co.in or even .xyz, some weird domains. We've seen some research also for a lot of these domains, such as .xyz, .top, .abc, for example, or 99% of the time that these domains are somewhat fraudulent or are fraudulent. And we dive a little bit more into that in a future slide. But another example is when you're optimizing your campaigns, you see that you're having an increase in CTR, your CPCs are going down, overall spend is going up, but there's no conversions. So that type of behavior doesn't really make sense to a performance marketer. But when we take a look into the deeper data, then perhaps it might be fraudulent information. Next slide, please. Okay, so to think about like the impetus of, or the reason why somebody might be doing ad fraud, I think the last example that was provided around increasing the CTRs but no conversions is a perfect example. So one of the reasons why, or we can make kind of hypothesis, is that maybe somebody is just clicking our ads for no intent of actual purchase or conversion. A lot of times this could be a competitor, or it could just be someone trying to be doing malicious things to either burn your ad spend or trying to get some information. So for the first example on the flow for the top right, we have an example of people using ad bots to kind of gather information from your website or your campaigns to build some type of database of information so that they can use to help better their own campaigns. The second example below that, which we've seen, or we commonly just call it competitor clicks now, but it's when your competitors are viewing your ads and actively clicking them. This could be done by human or by some type of bot. The effect of this is actually kind of multiplied too. So most people's listings or search campaigns on Google search or Google display, you have a daily budget, right? Now, if somebody's clicking your campaigns like repetitively for the first like couple hours of the day, then your daily budget completely gets burned out. And now you've lost the money from advertising. And then also you've lost the opportunity cost of potential customers coming in later in the day. Sometimes Google does have a automated system that does prevent or not charge you for some of these clicks and posts. However, you still lost the opportunity during that time. We'll get a little bit more into the refund stuff as well, but we'll just touch slightly onto it. Next slide, please. So here are just a couple of customers that we work with within the Japanese region. So Smart News, in their case study that we've had was that they were increasing their budget and over time, and they weren't seeing much improvement within their conversions. So what we've seen there was a decrease in CTRs and an increase in CVRs, which led to just the overall increase in ROAS. Something that's also mentioned there too was that there was a decrease in overall invalid conversions, which led to also time savings. Because if you remove the invalid leads, then your salespeople don't have to worry so much about trying to filter out and qualify those users. The AllConnect example here, I think, is maybe something that might resonate very well with Pakistan. This one in particular was around the domain issue. So for example, here was when we were looking through AllConnect's domains, we saw several of their advertisements, I think around 10 to 20% of their advertising was going towards these domains that were fraudulent, such as .xyz or even .co.in. AllConnect is a telecom company within Japan, and their only audience that they care about is Japanese audience. So what we found was after reporting what we did here, we pulled down all the information, including the refer information, matched it to the Google Click IDs, and prepared a document for them to send directly to Google. There is a Google refund form. The form, unfortunately, cannot be filled by us. It has to be filled by the advertiser, but we can help with gathering all the information necessary to perform this refund process. And in this particular use case, they were able to save around 20 to 25,000 US dollars. Unfortunately, Google doesn't always accept these refund processes, but they do if it makes enough sense and you create a good enough case to fight for this type of refund. And we were able to do so in this case. And the last example in this slide is the Porter's example. So Porters came to us and they're like, hey, we have 150 leads per month and 130 of them are spam leads. So when our salespeople contact these contacts that we got as conversions, they either said something along the lines of, we never sent us or sent you our data, or like, who are you, etc. So completely invalid leads, wasting the time of the salesperson and wasting the budget as well. After running SpiderAF for a month, we saw that the total conversions actually did decrease down to, I think, 40. But what we ended up finding with them was that of the 40 leads, 38 of them or so were valid leads. So overall, the total valid lead count increased, and they saved a lot of the time with their salespeople on the no longer having to deal with those invalid leads. Slide. Okay, so these are a couple of use cases, or a little more in-depth use cases to explain how SpiderAF might be able to help, or just type of data that we're looking at. So in this case was online sales. So this is an e-commerce company who was just in general concerned about spending money on bots. And as they were shifting more to digital advertising, they were also a little bit worried about brand damage. So in this case, they saw that initially, or for the Japanese sales side, we tend to do a period of time where we only measure, and then we activate blocking. And sometimes we do A/B tests directly with another network, in this case, such as Yahoo versus Google. And our main controls that we were using here were in combination of IP blacklisting, audience pixel blocking, and also placement blocking as well. And we're able to see a decrease in invalid activity, particularly more so in Google than in Yahoo, where there was not invalid or not blocking enabled. The total damage here was around $6,000 US. Okay, this is also another e-commerce company who in particular was more worried about the placements. So in Japan, we have a concept called anti-social forces, which is basically a government term that kind of buckets a bunch of I don't know how to exactly say this now anymore. It's basically like a mafia kind of websites that promote negative behavior, websites that promote like buying and selling of guns, alcohol, and that kind of stuff that is illegal within Japan, and the association to that type of information. So with our placement tool, we're able to scrape down information of websites and then categorize these websites into either antisocial websites or foreign language websites, for example. But in this case with the online sales, they're looking to make sure that their brand wasn't damaged by being associated by this type of behavior. So we blocked these types of placements from their campaigns, also ended up reducing their total invalid traffic as well, from about 2% down to 0.7%. And also just to guarantee that you're not serving against these illegal websites that could actually be reassociated to your brand and cause you legal issues as well.
Guys, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box. Ronald is going to take it at the end of the session. Thank you.
And I think from here, it's Faisal.
Yes, thank you, Ronald. So essentially, if we look at what Ronald was talking about and the size of the ad fraud, so in Pakistani context, you're also looking at when you're wasting money, it is not going towards the rightful business objective, and that is what causes more issues. So even if you save that money towards the end, you've already lost the opportunity. So the right time to connect with the customer is lost. So you have to always keep in mind. So according to an estimate, again, we don't have solid numbers in Pakistan on digital spend, but according to estimates and well-documented estimates, the total digital marketing spend is about $300 million a year, which is continuing to grow. And the reason it is growing at a much faster pace now, and as we've seen in the last 2 years, is because person-to-person contact was reduced during COVID. Markets were shut down. We were in a lockdown. And a lot of people, a lot of businesses decided that this is the time to start attracting customers online. Now, with high growth also comes high opportunity for fraudulent activity. And we've seen that in the past, that people do create websites that kind of just have an ad network attached to them. You're delivering ads to those websites, but they're not of any use to you. There is robot activity, there is human-based activity, which is being done to create click frauds either manually or in an automated process. So it is important for people to understand that this is something that needs to be managed, and needs to be managed to an extent where you can save it. So according to estimates, we're approximately losing $60 million this year to ad fraud. That's about 20% of the amount being spent. Now, circling that back into the economy, into the business economy, that makes a lot more sense rather than just losing that out to fraudulent activity, right? And another aspect of our being in Pakistan and losing this is we do earn in rupees, we do spend in dollars, and the exchange rate, it affects us. So imagine if you can save 20% of your budget from going to waste, you can improve your ROAS and ROI both from a marketing perspective as well as from a business perspective. And the $300 million number is possibly underreported because we take into account a lot of traditional advertisers, the FMCG brands, the MNCs, the telecom brands, which have traditionally been advertising on television and print and outdoor. And these were the advertisers that people thought were active in the market. But there are a lot of SMBs, a lot of startups that have not really been accounted for, and they do spend a lot of money. We know of a number of startups in Pakistan who've got large amount of fundings, they've become unicorns, and they've been spending money, but that money has not been accounted for. And also a bunch of these startups are registered abroad. They create their advertising accounts from abroad. The payments are done abroad. So that spend is also not accounted for. And the pace this number is growing, it is going to hit double-digit growth again for next year and the next 3-4 years. And as the market saturates, it becomes more important for people to conserve what they are spending and spending it in a good direction rather than in a bad direction, right? And as Ronald was mentioning, when we talk about the e-com client, even the Japanese case study is relevant in Pakistan, especially when you're working with e-com giants in the country. You're not always privy as a brand or as an advertiser privy to the data that they're getting. Now, if there is fraudulent activity, even though you're directing X percentage of your impressions forming into clicks over to the e-com merchant, your ROS is low and your conversion rates are low. And if you realize that 20% of 30% of that is being wasted, you can redirect those budgets into better activities and get better results. Okay. And I think if it's okay, Afshin, we can take a few questions before we move on at this point. What do you think, Ronald?
Sure.
Guys,
Do we
any
wanna-
questions?
I just have a quick question. Like, what's the estimated size of fraud happening in Pakistan right now in terms of dollar terms? Any vague idea?
So
Or is
I
it-
had about $60 million.
60 million.
Yes.
Okay, that's a big number.
That is a huge number. And imagine if the large advertisers are losing that much, smaller advertisers who are not that sophisticated are losing a little bit more.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
is it intentional, or is this fraud just targeted towards, just going and pretending that, ad has been seen? So, I mean, is it targeted towards a certain brand or a certain organization, or it just generally happens?
Yeah, I can chime.
Yes, go ahead, Ronald.
Yeah, sure. In general, we generally see about 20% of all advertising ends up having invalid traffic. That 20% is the invalid traffic, that is. It kind of depends. So typically it is targeted at individuals or at brands, but we do also see just general fraud that does occur, particularly at the placement level. So for instance, on Google display ads, your ads just kind of go to any type of website possible. We see a lot of interesting type of fraud that does occur in placements, and particularly we see a lot of like domain spoofing. So what you might see in your analytics, for example, or even sometimes in Google report or in a Google AdWords reporting, is that the ad comes from like New York Times. But if you look at like deeper signals, you can actually see that it comes from websites that aren't even related to New York Times. They're just like a park domain with just an ad placement, for example. A lot of that times just residual fraud that does occur, people just trying to steal impressions and steal clicks and budgets. And then the more targeted type we do see is around particularly competitors trying to really bury your budget so that their advertising gets served above yours, or to tank whatever other in deeper performance. For example, Google or Facebook is a great example of using performance metrics as engagement metrics on advertising to help rank their waterfall or the order of which ads are served. And when Facebook's seeing that like several of your ads are just not really resulting in any session data or just instant bounces, then they're less likely to prioritize your ads, or at least you would have to pay more so you have a higher quality score, for instance.
Good, thank you.
I think something to note too is that 20% is just the overall market percentage, but it does vary very heavily dependent on the network that you are serving on. In display advertising is typically where we see the most amount of fraud, but in search ads, we still see somewhere around 5 to 10%, depending on the geo and targeting. But display, like anywhere between 40 to, or like sometimes lower, 20 to like 80% even of display ads could potentially even be somewhat fraudulent.
So there are click farms across Southeast Asia that actually a competitor brand can hire potentially, or they're simply operating on behalf of certain websites to increase their cost per click revenue. Again, if you're on an ad network, let's say Google Ads, and you don't really, you're not making placement targeting, so you won't really know where your ad is being served or where it will be served. And if you have active blocking a tool like SpiderAF in place, what it does is it starts validating that information for you as well. And first, it will create a blacklist, so your next campaign does not go on board. It creates an audit process for you to go back to Google or Facebook and say, look, this ad was not served for what my campaign parameters were, or this is a generally invalid or a sophisticated invalid click or fraudulent activity. So you can start building the cases. So saving at the front end and saving at the back end, and also the quality score point that Ronald was mentioning, that as your ad serving needs to improve, the quality score needs to improve as well, and your cost goes up in relative terms to your quality score of an ad. And Google pays a lot of attention to that. And if your quality score is low, that means you'll be paying more for that placement you're seeking.
Hi, this is Molly. I've got a quick question. I represent Novelty Media, by the way. If let's suppose we do hire SpiderAF services, is this blocking real time, or is this like more likely after the campaign has been served and you give us analytics and you blacklist all the illegal website or domains that, where the campaign is being headed? So it's more of is it real time, or is it after the campaign has been finished?
Sure. It kind of depends on the integration, but typically we kind of put ourselves in a situation where it's mostly post-bid, but we do have some real-time actions as well, depending on how we want to integrate. But for example, publishers, we do have a publisher-specific integration that is real-time that uses a redirector. But for most of the advertisements, we do a post-bid setup that does help with the pre-bid as well. So for instance, we do daily updates of the IP blacklist. So what happens is, let me explain the full flow, I guess is a better way of doing it. But our system runs on a tracker that sits on your website. So as traffic gets into your website, we're able to analyze that traffic and determine whether or not traffic was fraudulent. We then take that information, and by day currently, we stack rank the IPs that are the most likely to, or have the highest rates of fraud. And we forward 500 of those to Google directly through an API connection. And then, but that 500 is applied to all the campaigns daily. We also, because 500, the reason why we use 500 IPs in this case is because that is a Google Ads limitation. We also do ranges as well. If the ranges do show 100% fraud rates, then we will use ranges to help increase the 500 limit. Also though, on top of the 500 limit, we do audience exclusions as well. The way how that functions is that when we do find invalid traffic occurring, we pixel the user as an invalid piece of traffic. And then that user is then added into the audiences on Google AdWords or Google Ads. And then those audiences are automatically, so through our system, applied as exclusions to all the live campaigns as well. This type of audience exclusion behavior occurs or is available for almost all ad networks that at least allow audience exclusions to be done. Currently, we are restricted right now to doing the automatic adding to campaigns only on Google at this time. We are working to implement Facebook and some other networks as well to help make sure that those audiences are excluded from campaigns.
Right, thank you. So a follow-up question on that. By the way, that was beautifully explained. It's just that probably Apple and Facebook does not allow audience restriction right now, as far as I understand. I might be wrong. Then if you are talking about exclusions and is this like overall campaigns? So for example, if we have, hypothetically speaking, Nike is doing some ad campaign, running some ad campaign, and then Adidas is also running some ad campaign. So would you be, if a certain XYZ, let's say 50 percentile of those exclusion came from Nike campaign, would that be implemented on the Adidas campaign as well? Are you building up that sort of a profile of those exclusion? That's one. And second, when you talk about partial real-time or post and prepaid exclusion, that means you're talking in terms of, let's say, 2 days of a delay owing to the time difference, I'm assuming.
Yeah, our system works on UTC, so it's about 1 day of a delay in terms of the time when it does forward over. We're looking to actually decrease that as much as possible, and hopefully we can get that into like hourly soon. I think typically around anything below hourly, we're not seeing much of a benefit past that because Google system itself tends to lag about 2 hours before an IP is no longer being shown that ad. But for the previous question related to the Nike and Adidas IP piece, right now we generally do account wide. So, or actually, I take that back. It also depends on how we configure. So the tracker itself does have additional configurations, what we call campaign. It can be a little bit confusing, but the campaign ID in this case would be the tracker that lives on wherever page. Or if you decide to use redirector, it'll be separate redirectors altogether. And the redirectors would have, or these pages would have like a campaign ID associated that's not related directly to the campaign of the Google ad. This is a representation for us to understand product. So you can do campaign equals Nike or campaign equals Adidas, and this would separate the two data sets so that we can apply the IP specifically to each one of those campaigns. However, we can also aggregate the IPs together if that's what you wish to do. We actually have clients that do both in terms of aggregating all of their products together and also separating their products. There is also some prioritization as well that we have done, where we prioritize the product. And if 500 IPs is not filled, for example, then we add in the other account level IPs.
Thanks.
Okay, so Malia, adding one more thing, you'd ask for audience exclusion on Apple and Facebook. Yes, they do have audience exclusions as well.
All right, thank you. Thanks for updating me.
No problem. Okay. we're open to the next question.
Guys, do we have any more questions? Okay, let's move on, I think, Faisal. Then we can take up questions. Important.
Okay, so a little bit more on the context in terms of Pakistan. A number of brands, especially multinational brands, also focus on filtering out websites or categories, either based on current affairs, news, violence, and antisocial behavior, just like in Japan. So there are certain illegal activities deemed illegal by the government, yet those websites are available in Pakistan and they do have ad networks. And then you have religious content where some brands do not want to associate themselves with. So these are also the filters that you can use. Again, for a brand which does not want to advertise on certain category of content, that is invalid traffic from them if that ad is being clicked on through that website, or if that ad is being displayed on that website. So again, creating those custom filters is also an option available to you, so that you can optimize your campaigns from that point on, right? And also adding on to what Maliha was talking about is across account level is possible. Campaign level is always done pretty much. Again, and if you're talking about competing brands like Adidas and Nike, then again, Nike's data will remain Nike's data and Adidas data will remain Adidas data, right? Unless and until you are the agency or the company tasked to handle both brands. Then you can probably do it across the accounts, but otherwise it is contained within your parameters and it is based on your data, right? So it remains proprietary from that point on. And that's from a data security point of view. And going back to the black hole that we see when brands connect with e-commerce merchants, again, since you're only getting access to partial data, it is, and I'm reiterating, it is very, very important for you to have tools like Spider AF so that you can determine that whatever traffic you're directing to the e-commerce merchant is valid traffic. There is no point in driving traffic that will not give you anything. It does benefit the e-commerce merchant on an SEO ranking because they have a higher traffic, but it does nothing for the brand which is actually spending money. So being conservative actually works in favor of the brand by not just saving money, but also improving the ROAS. I think that's pretty much it from my side. Afshin, all yours.
Okay, guys, we don't have any questions at the moment. Okay, so for more details regarding Spider, AF tool and Jack of Digital, please get in touch with us. As you can see in the last slide, our website, you can get in touch with Mariam. We've provided her email address also. We'll connect you on one-to-one basis with the team, so you can have one-to-one session with them and get more detailed overview of what it's all about. Actually, Spider AF is a very new phenomena for our market, and I think it's just going to take a little more time for us to get more information to you guys. And I hope the webinar was of information to all of you. And thank you all for joining. If you have any more questions, please reach out to us. You can write to Mariam and we can get in touch with you. Thank you, Ronald, for your time, and thank you, Faisal, for your time. And we'll connect you with Spider team once we have any emails regarding more details. We'll connect you to Kashif, who's leading from there, from Jack of Digital. And that's about it.
Okay, and by the way, this session is being recorded and will be made available for those of you.
The webinar will be available, yes, on our website, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Ronald. It was a pleasure having you here. And thank you, team Jack of Digital and Spider. And thank you, everyone for attending this.
Thank you.